Leningrad, the city we now know as St. Petersburg, stands as a stunning jewel on the Neva River in Russia. It was once the proud capital of the Russian Empire, a city of grand palaces, breathtaking cathedrals, and rich cultural history. But in the autumn of 1941, this vibrant metropolis was plunged into one of the darkest chapters of the Second World War. On September 8, German and Finnish forces completed their encirclement of the city, cutting it off from the rest of the Soviet Union. This was the beginning of the Siege of Leningrad, a brutal and prolonged military blockade that would last for an astonishing 872 days, ending only in January 1944. A city of nearly 3 million people was trapped, with no way in and no way out. The strategic importance of Leningrad was immense, making it a primary target for Adolf Hitler's Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Hitler saw Leningrad not just as a military objective, but as a symbol. It was the cradle of the Bolshevik Revolution and bore the name of its leader, Vladimir Lenin. Capturing it would be a devastating blow to Soviet morale and a huge propaganda victory for the Nazis. The Führer's orders were chillingly clear. The city was not to be taken by storm, but was to be wiped from the face of the earth through starvation and relentless bombardment. He wanted to erase its existence and its people entirely. The German military plan was methodical and cruel. Army Group North, alongside their Finnish allies to the north, tightened a noose around Leningrad, severing all rail lines and land routes. The only tenuous connection to the outside world was across the vast expanse of Lake Ladoga, a lifeline that would become both a symbol of hope and a scene of immense tragedy. The initial belief among the city's defenders and inhabitants was that the Red Army would soon break through and liberate them. No one could have imagined the sheer length and horror of the ordeal that was about to unfold, an ordeal that would test the limits of human endurance. As the siege began, the city's food and fuel supplies were perilously low. A devastating German air raid in the first week destroyed the Badaev warehouses, where a large portion of Leningrad's grain and sugar reserves were stored. This single act of destruction was a catastrophic blow, accelerating the onset of famine. The people of Leningrad, from factory workers to artists, from soldiers to children, found themselves facing a future defined not by days or weeks, but by the desperate, moment-to-moment struggle for survival against an enemy determined to annihilate them through cold, hunger, and fear. The Iron Ring had closed, and the battle for life had begun. Life inside besieged Leningrad quickly descended into a relentless cycle of suffering. The primary enemy was not always the distant German artillery, but the gnawing, ever-present hunger that hollowed out bodies and spirits. Food rationing was introduced almost immediately, but the portions were minuscule and shrank as the siege wore on. At its lowest point, during the brutal winter of 1941-42, the daily bread ration for a civilian was a mere 125 grams, a small, dense slice often made with sawdust, cellulose, and other fillers to add bulk. This tiny piece of bread was, for many, their only food for the entire day, a stark symbol of their desperate fight for existence. The cold was an equally merciless foe. The first winter of the siege was one of the coldest on record. With fuel supplies exhausted, the city froze. Pipes burst, leaving homes without water, and the electricity supply failed, plunging Leningrad into a deep, perpetual darkness. People huddled in their apartments, burning furniture, books, and anything else they could find to generate a flicker of warmth. Frost covered the inside of windows, and the simple act of leaving your home was a life-threatening decision. The biting winds and sub-zero temperatures claimed thousands of lives, with many simply freezing to death in their beds or on the streets while searching for food or water. On top of the starvation and freezing cold, the city was under constant threat from the sky. German aircraft and long-range artillery bombarded Leningrad day and night, targeting factories, hospitals, and residential buildings without discrimination. The wail of air raid sirens became the soundtrack to daily life, forcing already weakened citizens to scramble for shelter in basements or metro stations. The destruction was immense, turning vibrant streets into rubble-strewn landscapes. Yet for many, the shelling became a grimly accepted part of their reality, a danger that paled in comparison to the certainty of starvation that haunted their every waking moment. In this frozen hell, everyday routines became monumental tasks. The simple act of fetching water meant a long, arduous journey to the frozen Neva River, where people would break holes in the ice and haul back heavy buckets or sleds. Funerals became impossible. The dead were often left in their homes for days or wrapped in sheets and taken on sleds to collection points. Diaries from the period, like that of young Tanya Savacheva, record this grim reality with heartbreaking simplicity. Her diary contained only a few short entries, each one noting the death of a family member until the final, chilling line. The Savachevs are dead. Everyone is dead. Only Tanya is left. Amidst the overwhelming despair, incredible stories of human resilience and cooperation emerged, proving that the human spirit could flicker even in the darkest of times. People found strength not just within themselves but in each other. Neighbors in apartment blocks formed small communities, pooling their meager resources and sharing whatever warmth or food they had. They would check on the elderly and the infirm, ensuring they had their water ration or a small piece of bread. These simple acts of kindness were acts of defiance, a refusal to let the inhumanity of the siege extinguish their own humanity. It was a quiet, daily resistance fought with compassion. The youth of Leningrad displayed extraordinary courage and became a vital part of the city's defense and survival. Teenagers, some as young as 12 or 13, took on adult responsibilities with unwavering determination. They joined fire-watching brigades, standing on the frozen rooftops of buildings to extinguish incendiary bombs dropped by German planes. They worked long hours in munitions factories, often on starvation rations, to produce weapons and ammunition for the soldiers at the front. These young people sacrificed their childhoods, stepping into roles that demanded immense bravery, helping to keep the city's heart beating even as its body was failing. One of the most powerful symbols of survival was the Road of Life, the perilous ice road established across the frozen surface of Lake Ladoga. During the winter months, convoys of trucks braved thin ice, blizzards, and German air attacks to bring vital supplies into the city and evacuate the most vulnerable citizens. Every trip was a gamble with death. Drivers worked in punishing conditions, their faces frostbitten, knowing that their cargo of flour could mean the difference between life and death for thousands. This treacherous route was Leningrad's artery, a testament to the ingenuity and sheer grit of those who kept it open against all odds. Families fought desperately to stay together and protect their children. Mothers would give their own tiny bread rations to their starving sons and daughters, weakening themselves to give their children a chance. One well-known story is that of a librarian who, despite being skeletal from hunger, continued to walk to the library every day. She wasn't reading, but rather, she was surrounded by books, the symbols of culture and knowledge that the Nazis wanted to destroy. Her act was a preservation of normalcy and intellect, a silent insistence that Leningrad's soul would outlive its tormentors. These personal battles, multiplied by millions, defined the city's collective will to survive. The tide began to turn in early 1943. After previous failed attempts, the Red Army launched Operation Iskra, Spark, in January. In a fierce and bloody battle, Soviet forces managed to break through the German lines south of Lake Ladoga, creating a narrow land corridor to the besieged city. While this did not end the siege entirely, it was a monumental breakthrough. The corridor, though still under enemy fire, allowed for a more consistent flow of supplies via a newly constructed railway. For the first time in nearly a year and a half, the people of Leningrad felt a genuine sense of hope. The Iron Ring had finally been cracked. The complete liberation of Leningrad came a year later, on January 27, 1944. A massive Soviet offensive, the Leningrad-Novgorod strategic offensive, shattered the German forces and pushed them back from the city's outskirts for good. The 872-day siege was over. The news was met with tears and overwhelming joy, celebrated with a thunderous artillery salute from the city's own cannons. Leningrad had survived, but the cost was staggering. It is estimated that over 1 million civilians died, the vast majority from starvation. The city was scarred and its population was decimated, but it had never surrendered. Today, the siege of Leningrad is remembered as a profound testament to the strength and sacrifice of its people. The city, now St. Petersburg, bears the memory of its ordeal with solemn dignity. The Piskaryovskoye Memorial Cemetery is the final resting place for nearly 500,000 victims of the siege, its long, grass-covered mass graves a silent, powerful reminder of the immense human cost. An eternal flame burns and the inscription reads, "No one is forgotten, nothing is forgotten." This phrase has become the motto for the remembrance of the siege, a promise to future generations that the suffering and heroism will never fade from memory. The legacy of the siege is not just one of tragedy, but also of incredible fortitude. Leningrad became the first Soviet city to be awarded the title of Hero City for its endurance. The story of its survival against impossible odds continues to inspire people around the world. It serves as a stark warning about the horrors of war, but also as a powerful example of how community, courage, and an unbreakable will to live can triumph over even the most determined efforts to crush the human spirit. The people of Leningrad proved that a city is more than its buildings. It is the collective soul of its inhabitants, and that soul refused to be extinguished.